Tonight, on To The Point. California's housing crisis front and center in this election year. Experts weigh in on what the next governor needs to do about it.
Continue to focus on creating more supply.
2 California detention centers are now federally owned. Tonight, the concerns from immigrant rights advocates. Back-to-school shopping is already underway, why experts say buying early could help stretch your budget. And smartwatches collect valuable health data, why that information often isn't making its way into your medical care.
Good evening. As always, thank you so much for joining us on To The Point. I'm Alex Bell. As California heads towards November's election for governor, we're asking, what does the state's housing crisis actually need from its next leader to be fixed? ABC10's Becca Habegger joins us now for a look at a recent statewide survey that sheds light on this very issue.
Alex, 2 out of 3 Californians call housing affordability a, quote, big problem where they live, and renters are more than twice as likely as homeowners to say the cost of housing places financial strain on them. And that's all according to the Public Policy Institute of California. So what do our 2 candidates for governor plan to do about it, and what do experts think they should do?
The Independent and Nonpartisan Public Policy Institute of California, or PPIC, says the median home value in California is $780,000. That's more than double the nationwide median of $370,000. The PPIC says nearly 900,000 people have left California since 2015, citing housing as a primary reason. Here in the Sacramento region, the market is showing small signs of change. Sales are up about 5% from a year ago. But Sacramento-based appraiser and housing analyst Ryan Lundquist says that's not the whole story.
The area where we're seeing the most growth, the price point, is actually between $400,000 and $500,000. And that's a ripe price point for first-time buyers.
He says the growth is concentrated at the entry level and that it's still nowhere near enough to meaningfully bring prices down.
We can't expect 2007, 2008 vibes with 2026 stats. It's just the reality of we don't have all this supply to very quickly drive down prices.
So what would he tell whoever wins in November?
I'd say continue to focus on creating more supply. Consumers don't want to just hear politicians pontificate and use those buzzwords about affordability and then simultaneously do nothing, which has pretty much been the case for so many decades.
California's 2 candidates for governor, Republican Steve Hilton and Democrat Javier Becerra, have said in previous interviews they hear that message.
There's nowhere better than California, but you can see how badly things have got off track. It's so expensive to live here.
We've stopped building the kind of starter homes and single-family homes we used to build so well in California.
Hilton's goals include making starter homes profitable and easier to build and creating a starter home loan program.
We have to tackle this cost of living crisis. One is building more homes makes it less expensive to buy one because too big a demand means that supply can you raise the price on that supply that's out there. So we'll build more.
Becerra also says he's in support of down payment assistance for people who are currently renting.
The more options that both buyers and renters have, that can soften prices, and that's exactly what we need.
The PPIC says California's next governor needs to know laws already on the books won't fix the problem by themselves. The authors put it simply, streamlining only matters where projects are economically viable. Their advice for whoever becomes California's next governor? Keep pushing supply, but balance state enforcement with what cities can realistically deliver on the ground. I asked Lundquist what gives him hope in this market.
I'm encouraged that this year we have about 250 more newly constructed homes that have been built in the region compared to 1 year ago. Not only buyers getting more product, but that opening up other product for other people who are trying to afford and rent. That's a win.
Now keep in mind, whoever wins in November inherits a problem some 3 decades in the making. Housing experts agree it won't be solved in one term, but they do say the difference between talk and action starts on day 1. Alex?
All right, Becca. Another dramatic turn. Listen to this.
We are suspending campaign operations. This is incredibly difficult because I know that some will think it's an admission of guilt, and it most certainly is not.
So that is Maine Democratic nominee Graham Plattner. He is announcing that he is ending his campaign in the U.S. Senate race. This comes after a rape allegation from a former girlfriend. Plattner has denied the accusation. Plattner has been losing support in the wake of the allegation. The Maine Democratic Party has also said that it will hold a convention to replace Plattner if he drops out of this U.S. Senate race. Now, this comes after a former girlfriend of Plattner's alleged that he physically abused her more than a decade ago. Plattner's campaign denies that he was violent towards women. They call this, the latest claim, quote, categorically false, and comes from a person with a well-documented political agenda. Since the start of President Trump's second term, California has firmly pushed back on federal immigration policies, including how detention centers are operated. Now state leaders are reacting to the sale of 2 of those facilities to the federal government. ABC 10 political reporter Jenny Huh has the details for us tonight.
That's part of the battle we're in, right? They find new ways to brutalize people and cheat the law. We have to find new ways to hold them accountable and assert our own California values and our own California states' rights.
Detention facilities have been at the forefront of California's pushback against the federal government over immigration enforcement. Immigrant rights advocates say they're concerned about how detainees are treated.
In the last year, 6 people have died inside California's private detention facilities.
There are 8 total detention centers in California. Last week, one of those operators, private prison company CoreCivic, sold its facilities in California City and Otay Mesa to the federal government in a near $1.5 billion deal.
The federal government, by owning the facilities and for them not being private, gains a sense of immunity from the state's laws and any state intrusion onto how the federal government operates.
Experts say to use the facilities, the federal government typically contracts with private prisons, which have to follow California rules and regulations. But when it's all federally owned and operated...
What do you think is the biggest difference we will see in terms of at least how these 2 specific facilities will be able to be regulated?
There's little state oversight.
CoreCivic says the company will still carry out day-to-day operations, at least for now. Its California City contract expires in August 2027. Its Otay Mesa contract expires in December 2029.
Now they're being bought out by the federal government so that they can be exempt from more scrutiny is completely disgusting.
California Democrats like Assemblymember Alex Lee have been pushing so-called anti-ICE legislation. A spokesperson for the U.S. Department of Homeland Security points to such pushback as the reason for their purchase. They say in part, quote, unlike in states like Florida and Oklahoma, ICE cannot rely on local, state, and county partners for detention space in California. The state's sanctuary politicians continue to push legislation to outlaw or make private prisons financially infeasible.
We have to deny more and more of these corporations any tax breaks or subsidies with California dollars.
Lee says his efforts to limit tax credits for companies and tax 50% of their revenue will continue so long as CoreCivic or others operating in California assist in detention center operations.
I mean, very simply put, California isn't deterred by this.
No. California is not going to be deterred by the federal government trying to cheat accountability.
Jenny Huh, ABC 10.
Well, a spokesperson for Governor Newsom tells us in part, quote, the federal government is using taxpayer dollars to reward human suffering while doing everything they can to avoid transparency and accountability to the American public. All right, stay with us. Still a lot more news to get to, like the Middle East crisis. It is escalating once again. The U.S. is striking Iran and what it could mean for your gas prices. And as temperatures rise, so do water dangers. The life-saving reminder is that every swimmer and boater should know.
And we've got some increasing moisture here in the days ahead. Well, what does that mean for maybe some thunderstorm chances? I'll show you coming up next.
But first, another headlines tonight. Health premiums could increase by double digits in 2027. Analysis from health policy organization KFF indicates most Affordable Care Act premiums are looking at a 10 to 20% increase. Enrollees who qualify for subsidies are largely protected from the changes. A federal judge ordered the release of $5 million to E. Jean Carroll today. Carroll was awarded the money by a jury who found Trump was liable for sexually abusing Carroll. Trump has denied the claim. The money had been held in a court-controlled account. President President Trump plans to appeal the release. And President Trump's name will remain off of the Kennedy Center. Today, a federal appeals court ruled it will not reverse a judge's order to remove his name. It was the second rejection by the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. Trump had argued that taking his name off the building would dampen fundraising efforts for the performing arts institution.
Well, as the weather gets warmer, of course, more people are hitting the rivers and lakes, and local agencies are really urging people to take the proper precautions to, of course, stay safe. And it comes after officials say that they've responded to several water rescues that nearly turned deadly. The key reminders from local officials are, of course, wear a life jacket, have a life jacket, or borrow one if you need one, and know how to swim if you're going to be getting in or near the water. The Sacramento Fire Department said that they responded to incidents where strong currents and deep water led to drownings. That, combined with cold water from melted snow, can also put the body in almost a state of shock that might make swimming a little bit more difficult. Now, there are also important reminders for boaters as well.
California law requires every boat to have a fire extinguisher that's properly usable, to have a U.S. Coast Guard approved life vest, to have a sounding device, which could be a horn or a whistle, and also a Type 4 throwable device.
And keep in mind, every person under the age of 13 must have a life jacket on at all times. That's when they are in the water or even just sitting on the boat. And I do want to get things over to Peter. As I just mentioned, the temperatures are getting a little bit warmer. I heard you say before, It's going to get a little bit more sticky. Obviously not as humid as what we would see in Florida, but California sticky, if you will.
Exactly. It's like 50% humidity, which isn't terrible, right? But I mean, still, it's going to feel a little bit warmer than that. That's for sure. As we get through the next couple of days. Only by like 2 to 3 degrees, but you notice a little bit of a difference. Today, though, we're very dry with temperatures right around the mid to upper 80s right now. Still 92 out in Colusa on the high country, right around 75 to 80 degrees here as we continue into your Wednesday evening. Tomorrow, we're rinse and repeating. 90s again, actually a little bit warmer than what we saw here today. It's going to be a hot start to next week as well. That's when we're seeing the humidity move in. And we're also bringing in the chance for maybe some rainfall and some thunderstorms, but also the potential for dry lightning here as well. Overnight, though, we're talking about some clear skies. The temperatures right around the mid to upper 50s for overnight lows. In the high country, right around 35 to 40 degrees as we get into your Thursday morning with highs in the afternoon well into the 90s here throughout the area. Sacramento, 95. Further to the south, Modesto at 98. Our friends at Turlock will see 100 tomorrow. Areas further to the north, Marysville, Oroville, Colusa will also see 100-degree temperatures here on your Thursday. It's not widespread hundreds. It's still hot, though, here as we get towards the end of the week. Right around the mid-80s in the high country. And as we get towards your weekend, we'll have a bit of a dip on Friday. But after that, temperatures climb right back up into the mid-90s with some partly cloudy skies both Saturday and Sunday. The reason we're getting those partly cloudy skies is more moisture is going to start to build here throughout the area off this area of high pressure. As that high brings that clockwise rotation, it brings in some Gulf moisture, some Pacific moisture here towards the region as we get towards your Sunday into your Monday. And on Monday is really kind of the key day that we're keeping an eye on for the potential for maybe some of that moisture to bring us some rainfall in the foothills and the high country, primarily in the high country though, but also the chance for dry lightning. So that's not a lot of rainfall. So if you have that lightning going with it, that's where you get that elevated fire danger. This weekend, though, pretty beautiful in the mountains if you do want to head to Tahoe before those thunderstorms start to pick up on Monday. The hills not too bad either, 94 and 90 on your Saturday and Sunday. And your 10-day forecast here in Sacramento, pretty comfortable there as well, at least as we get towards tomorrow and Friday. The real days you're going to notice the kind of uncomfortable heat are Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week when we start to see those temperatures climb near the 100-degree mark. Again, with 50% humidity, it could feel like it's right around 101, 102.
All right, Peter, thank you. Right after the break, it may be summer, but back to school shopping, it's already here. Why buying early and using AI can actually help you save a little bit of money. And a major boost for Sacramento's economy, the new manufacturing facility bringing jobs and clean energy innovation. The U.S. is now launching a second night of strikes on Iran, according to the Pentagon. This after President Trump left Turkey, where he attended the NATO summit. ABC's Karen Travers has more.
Hours after threatening to continue U.S. strikes against Iran, President Trump saying he doesn't think this will lead to a return to full-scale war.
No, I don't think it's going to start again. I think it's going to go very quickly.
Earlier today, the president signaled the ceasefire deal he signed with Iran just 3 weeks ago is dead. He declared negotiations with Iran, quote, a waste of time.
we can play games, but I'm not sure I want to make a deal. Let's just finish the job.
But when asked how he now plans to get Iran's nuclear material and reach a deal on its nuclear program, the president said,
well, we've already got the nuclear material because it's so far underground, nobody's going to be able to get it except us.
The U.S. and Iran traded strikes this week. The U.S. hitting Iranian air defense and coastal surveillance systems, missile and drone launch sites and port facilities, and 60 Iranian small boats, according to U.S. Central Command. The strikes in response to Iran targeting 3 commercial ships in the Strait of Hormuz. Iran overnight firing back, launching attacks targeting U.S. military sites in Bahrain and Kuwait. Ukraine was supposed to be a key focus at this NATO summit, the escalation with Iran overshadowing President Trump's meeting with President Zelensky. But the president indicating more U.S. help is on the way for Ukraine, allowing them to make Patriot air defense systems.
We're going to give a license to you to make Patriots. That's pretty cool, right? This way you can't complain that we're not giving them enough.
President Trump today again insisting that President Putin wants to end the war in Ukraine. But when pushed on what Putin would concede to make that happen, the president couldn't say. Karen Travers, ABC News, Ankara, Turkey.
Oil prices are changing once again as President Trump says the ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran may officially be over. According to maritime intelligence firm Kepler, 41 ships passed through the strait yesterday, up from 36 the day before. But the threat between the U.S. and Iran ramping up puts the ships trying to navigate the strait at risk once again. Any long-term disruption to the flow of traffic in the Strait of Hormuz is expected to surge gas prices as it did leading up to the temporary truce. Now, here in California, gas prices were at their peak on June 14th when gas was $6.43 a gallon. That is regular unleaded gas, according to AAA. That average is now down significantly at $5.36, but that is still 81 cents higher than this time last year. And speaking of money, let's jump into your price points tonight. In some parts of the country, kids are just settling into that summer break, but retailers are already stocked for back-to-school shopping. It's really part of a new normal that reflects recent economic ups and downs. Karen Caifa explains.
Summer is in full swing, but back-to-school buying is already underway.
We're finding even though families are feeling economic pressure, it's almost treated as a non-negotiable.
In recent years, back-to-school shoppers have been met with sticker shock for reasons ranging from post-pandemic supply chain problems to tariffs. This year, gas prices have fallen off Iran war-related peaks, but they're still higher than 1 year ago. And survey data released by the Federal Reserve Bank of New York Tuesday showed consumers expect more pressure from higher prices. That's why retailers are stretching the season and the sales for consumers to browse now.
As retailers, move their sales earlier, consumers are responding to that, and we know that the consumer is very price conscious right now. They want to stretch their dollar.
Kelly Peterson, global retail leader for PwC, says their research finds more families using AI tools, especially for deal hunting.
They're also actually finding it to understand and predict where the timing around promotions is going to be. So they're using AI as almost like a digital assistant to try to figure out when should they be buying.
And retailers will be watching to see how resilient consumers remain.
This is going to be a really important season, and it will give us a perspective on where the consumer is headed as we move on in the year.
In Washington, I'm Karen Caifa.
A new survey suggests doctors would like to use data from their patients' wearable devices. However, the doctors say that there are barriers that are keeping that from becoming a reality. More than 2,200 doctors in 6 countries were polled, including the U.S. Nearly all reported reviewing the data in some capacity, and the majority reported it could offer a clinical advantage when it comes to caring for their patients. However, no more than 6% of doctors in any country actually integrated that data into their clinical practice. The doctor cited reimbursement, regulatory conditions, and workflow feasibility as the reason for the lack of integration. Cardiologists and endocrinologists were the most likely to use the wearable data in their practices. The survey was conducted by the American Medical Association and Medscape. All right, right after the break, a new battery manufacturing plant is charging up the local economy, the impact on jobs and clean energy. All right, before we go, more than 200 jobs are coming to the Sacramento area thanks to a new battery storage center. Peak Energy unveiled its new Sacramento manufacturing facility. It is the nation's first factory dedicated to producing grid-scale sodium-ion battery storage systems. The facility is expected to generate about $71 million in capital investment. Local leaders hope the addition will help boost California's clean energy future and the region's growing advanced manufacturing sector.
We're getting leading edge companies are coming here to transform themselves and transform our economy. So we worked on this for quite a few years. We got about 3 or 4 years into this, 3 hard, and it's very exciting.
The facility is located near Sacramento International Airport. That is our show for tonight. As always, thank you so much for watching, for always inviting us into your home. If you have something you think the team and I should be looking into, you already know what to do. You can email us at tothepoint@abc10.com. I know we've heard from a lot of you at home already. I promise our team is working to get back to you. We will as soon as we can, but we really appreciate you reaching out. I'll see you back here tomorrow. Have a great night.